In the Wheel of Time, Moiraine Damodred and Liandrin Guirale are two of the most powerful and influential Aes Sedai, but they could not be more different in their allegiances, personalities, and use of the One Power. Moiraine, a dedicated sister of the Blue Ajah, serves the light and the prophecy of the Dragon Reborn, while Liandrin, a member of the Red Ajah turned Black Ajah, has betrayed the White Tower in favor of the Dark One's will. What happens when two of the most formidable Aes Sedai clash in a battle of power, strategy, and deception? Moiraine Damodred, the master of foresight and manipulation, faces off against Liandrin Guirale, the ruthless enforcer of the shadow. Strength alone won't decide this fight. Cunning, experience, and the will to win will shape the outcome. Who would emerge victorious in this battle of light versus shadow? And what would be the devastating consequences? This detailed breakdown will analyze their strengths, weaknesses, tactical abilities, and potential outcomes, answering the ultimate question: who would win in a battle between these two powerful Aes Sedai? Let's start it. The power levels of Liandrin and Moiraine. Moiraine and Liandrin are both Aes Sedai, meaning they have been trained in the use of the One Power within the White Tower, mastering weaves of air, fire, water, earth, and spirit. However, not all Aes Sedai are equal when it comes to raw strength and the power. Moiraine is not among the most powerful Aes Sedai in terms of sheer strength, but what she lacks in raw power, she makes up for in skill, experience, and intelligence. She was strong enough to pass the White Tower's tests, and while she is nowhere near the level of Egwene, Nynaeve, or even Elaine, she is still a formidable channeler. Additionally, she has had access to powerful artifacts, such as the angreal she often carries, which can boost her strength significantly in a battle. Liandrin, on the other hand, is considered one of the stronger Aes Sedai, with a more aggressive style of channeling. Her training in the Red Ajah made her highly skilled in weaves used for combat, particularly those meant to neutralize male channelers, such as shielding and binding. When she later joined the Black Ajah, she gained access to forbidden knowledge, allowing her to use dark weaves that most Aes Sedai would never even consider using. While Liandrin may have more natural strength in the One Power, Moraine's superior tactical mind and ability to use angreal could help balance the fight. In a direct struggle of raw strength, Liandrin might have the edge, but power alone is rarely the deciding factor in a battle between Aes Sedai. Battle strategies. A fight between these two would be determined by strategy, preparation, and quick thinking, as much as by power itself. Moiraine is a master of long-term strategy and deception. She never enters a battle without preparing extensively beforehand. She is known for her ability to think many steps ahead, using knowledge, hidden allies, and tactical positioning to gain the advantage. Her greatest weapon is not just the One Power, but her intelligence, ability to manipulate events, and knowledge of ancient lore. She would likely lay traps, use misdirection, and strike when Liandrin least expects it. Liandrin, in contrast, is a more aggressive, direct combatant. As a member of the Red Ajah, she was trained to fight male channelers, meaning she has an instinct for fast, decisive attacks. She is more likely to launch an overwhelming assault, attempting to shield Moiraine instantly to prevent her from fighting back. With her Black Ajah knowledge, she might even use weaves that inflict pain or cloud Moraine's mind, forcing her into a defensive position. If the battle is one of preparation and cunning, Moiraine would have the upper hand. If it is a sudden surprise attack, Liandrin's sheer power and aggressiveness might overwhelm Moiraine before she has a chance to counterattack. Weaves and abilities. Moraine's combat abilities revolve around versatile, unpredictable weaves. She is particularly skilled in fire and air-based attacks, capable of using fireballs, cutting winds, and defensive shields. One of her greatest strengths is her ability to use spirit-based weaves, which are crucial for intricate spells like warding, shielding, and unraveling other weaves. If given time to prepare, she could place powerful wards around herself, making it nearly impossible for Liandrin to catch her off guard. Liandrin, as a former Red Ajah and Black Ajah agent, is a specialist in aggressive and controlling weaves. She would likely attempt to cut Moiraine off from the One Power immediately, using a shielding weave that if successful, would leave Moiraine defenseless. Additionally, she has access to forbidden Black Ajah techniques, such as weaves that cause pain or weaken an opponent's willpower, making her a dangerous opponent. If Moiraine is able to maintain distance and counter with deception and trickery, she has a solid chance of victory. If Liandrin is able to close the gap quickly and use a shield before Moiraine can react, she could dominate the battle instantly. Allies and resources. In a one-on-one fight, Moiraine and Liandrin would rely purely on their own skills and the one power, but in reality, neither of them ever fights alone. Moiraine has strong alliances with Lan Mandragoran, Rand al'Thor, and many others, any of whom could come to her aid in an actual battle. Lan, as her warder, is one of the deadliest warriors in the world, and his presence would completely shift the battle in her favor. Even if Liandrin managed to shield Moiraine, Lan would still be able to physically attack and kill her, making a direct confrontation extremely dangerous for Liandrin. Liandrin has the backing of the Black Ajah, meaning that if she were in danger, other Dark Sisters could intervene. However, unlike Moiraine, she does not have a warder to physically protect her. This puts her at a disadvantage if the fight involves both one-power combat and physical confrontation. If this were a one-on-one fight, with no outside interference, the battle would be much closer. If it involved their allies, Moiraine's access to Lan and the forces of light would give her the edge. How a duel would unfold. If Moiraine and Liandrin were to face each other, the battle would be swift and brutal. There would be no drawn-out exchange of pleasantries, no hesitation in unleashing their most powerful weaves. Liandrin, being the more aggressive of the two, would strike first, attempting to shield Moiraine before she could retaliate. She would likely weave flows of air to try and bind her opponent while simultaneously striking with fire and spirit, attacking Moiraine's defenses on multiple fronts. Moiraine, knowing Liandrin's preferred tactics, would not allow herself to be caught off guard. She would either counter with precise spirit weaves to disrupt Liandrin's shielding attempt, or use her deep knowledge of battle tactics to redirect the attack, forcing Liandrin into a more vulnerable position. Unlike Liandrin, Moiraine does not fight for domination, but for control of the battlefield. She would not waste her energy on direct attacks, but would instead use deception and subtlety to turn Liandrin's strength against her. One of Moiraine's greatest assets is her ability to mislead and misdirect. If she sensed that she was at risk of being overpowered, she might weave illusions to make it appear as though she was somewhere she was not, forcing Liandrin to waste her strength attacking a false target. She might also weave a ward to momentarily block Liandrin's access to the one power, cutting her off long enough to strike with her own counterattack. If the battle lasted beyond the initial exchange, it would become a test of endurance and strategy. Liandrin, being naturally stronger than the one power, would attempt to push Moiraine into submission through sheer force. Moiraine, understanding that she could not match Liandrin's strength directly, would focus on evasion, precision, and striking at the right moment. She would conserve her strength, waiting for Liandrin to make a mistake before exploiting it to turn the battle in her favor. Strength versus cunning. Beyond the sheer mechanics of combat, a duel between Moiraine and Liandrin would also be a contest of wills. Both women are highly intelligent, deeply ambitious, and utterly confident in their own superiority. However, their psychological approaches to power are drastically different. Moiraine operates from a place of calm control, always keeping her emotions in check and never allowing her enemies to see her vulnerable. Liandrin, on the other hand, is ruled by her anger, her desire for dominance, and her belief in her own superiority. This psychological contrast could be the deciding factor in a battle between them. Liandrin, though powerful, is easily provoked. She thrives on control and hates being outmaneuvered. If Moiraine were able to disrupt her concentration, shake her confidence, or forced her into a position where she felt she was losing control, Liandrin might begin to falter. Moiraine, recognizing this weakness, would exploit it, using Liandrin's emotional volatility against her. Liandrin, being a member of the Black Ajah, has likely engaged in battles before, but her training has always been rooted in overwhelming her enemies with power. She has never faced someone like Moiraine, who does not fight for dominance, but for victory through any means necessary. Moiraine would not hesitate to feign weakness if it meant luring Liandrin into a trap. She would not fight to prove herself stronger, but to ensure that she walks away as the one still standing. Moraine's access to angreal. One critical factor in this battle is Moraine's frequent use of angreal, objects that enhance an Aes Sedai's ability to channel. Even though Liandrin is naturally stronger in the one power, Moiraine could level the playing field or even surpass her strength with the right angreal in her possession. If Moiraine had an angreal on hand, her ability to weave powerful attacks would increase significantly, allowing her to not only defend against Liandrin's onslaught, but also strike back with equal or greater force. This would be a turning point in the fight, as it would remove Liandrin's advantage of raw strength and shift the battle into one of skill and strategy, areas where Moiraine excels. Liandrin, being overconfident in her own power, might not even consider the possibility that Moiraine could have an angreal. She might underestimate Moraine's strength, assuming that she can overpower her, as she has done with other opponents in the past. This miscalculation could cost her dearly, as Moiraine would seize upon the opportunity to unleash a devastating counterattack. The aftermath of their battle. If Moiraine and Liandrin were to fight, the battle itself would be only part of the story. The aftermath would have far-reaching consequences for both women, the White Tower, and the larger conflict between the light and the shadow. If Moiraine were to win, the repercussions for Liandrin and the Black Ajah would be severe. Moiraine, ever the strategist, would not merely defeat Liandrin and walk away. She would use the opportunity to expose Liandrin's true nature, revealing her as a member of the Black Ajah. This revelation would be devastating to Liandrin's carefully crafted position of power, particularly if it occurred within the White Tower itself. Liandrin has spent years hiding her true allegiance, manipulating her fellow sisters, and working within the Tower's hierarchy. If Moiraine successfully unmasked her, she would be hunted by her own sisters, forced to flee into the arms of the Forsaken or face execution at the hands of the Merlin Seat. If Liandrin were to win, the consequences would be just as severe, if not worse. Moiraine is not just another Aes Sedai. She is one of the key players in the battle against the Shadow, deeply tied to Rand al'Thor and the fight for the fate of the world. If she were to fall, the entire balance of power would shift in favor of the Dark One. Liandrin, as a servant of the Shadow, would use Moraine's defeat to strengthen her own standing, possibly rising within the ranks of the Black Ajah. She could also take Moiraine captive rather than kill her outright, delivering her to one of the Forsaken for interrogation and torture. Moiraine possesses knowledge that the Dark One's forces would find invaluable, and breaking her would be a priority for the Shadow. How the White Tower would react. The White Tower is a place of strict hierarchy, discipline, and political maneuvering, and a battle between two Aes Sedai, especially one involving a known Black Ajah member, would create serious turmoil within its ranks. If Moiraine were to expose Liandrin as a Black Ajah agent, it would deepen the already existing fractures within the Tower. The existence of the Black Ajah is one of the Tower's most well-guarded secrets, something that most Aes Sedai refuse to believe or acknowledge. If Liandrin's treachery were made public, it would force the Merlin Seat to take decisive action, launching a full-scale hunt for hidden Dark Friends within the Tower's ranks. Moraine's credibility and status would rise dramatically if she successfully unmasked Liandrin. Though she has spent much of her life operating independently, often on the outskirts of the Tower's political games, this event would cement her as one of the most important figures in the battle against the Shadow. She could potentially return to the Tower in a more influential capacity, using her victory to rally support among the sisters who are still loyal to the light. If Liandrin were to win and kill Moiraine, the White Tower's leadership would be left scrambling. Moiraine, despite her rogue tendencies, is still respected by many within the Tower, and her death would be felt as a major loss. Some Aes Sedai might begin questioning how deeply the Black Ajah's corruption has spread, leading to internal paranoia and distrust among the Ajahs. The Merlin Seat would be forced to either acknowledge the existence of the Black Ajah or continue to deny it, creating even greater division. For Liandrin, The implications of a victory would depend on whether her involvement with the Black Ajah remained secret. If she managed to eliminate Moiraine without exposing her true allegiance, she could continue operating within the White Tower, growing her influence and recruiting more sisters into the Shadow's cause. However, if her actions were discovered, she would be forced to flee, potentially becoming one of the most wanted women in the Westlands. Lan Mandragoran's role. One of the most significant factors in this hypothetical battle is Lan Mandragoran, Moiraine's warder. The warder bond is one of the greatest advantages an Aes Sedai can have in combat, as it allows for near instantaneous communication, enhanced physical abilities, and a level of protection that few others can match. Moiraine and Lan have spent years working together, refining their ability to coordinate their attacks and defenses with seamless precision. If Moiraine were in danger, Lan would not hesitate to intervene. His presence alone would change the dynamics of the fight, as Liandrin has no warder to protect her. While she is powerful in the One Power, she is still physically vulnerable to a skilled warrior like Lan, who could close the distance between them before she had a chance to weave a proper defense. If Moiraine managed to hold Liandrin's attention long enough, Lan could strike a decisive blow, ending the battle in seconds. Even if Liandrin were to shield Moiraine, Lan's sheer combat prowess would make it nearly impossible for her to finish the fight before he reached her. Unlike Moiraine, Lan does not need to rely on the One Power to fight. His swordsmanship, speed, and battle instincts are more than enough to turn the tide. Who would win? If Liandrin and Moiraine were to face each other in battle, the outcome would largely depend on the circumstances of the fight. If the battle was based purely on raw strength in the One Power, Liandrin has the advantage. She is naturally stronger, has more aggressive combat training, and has access to forbidden Black Ajah weaves that could give her the upper hand. If the battle was based on strategy, planning, and trickery, Moiraine would almost certainly emerge victorious. She is far more intelligent and experienced, knows how to set traps and misdirect her enemies, and is better at using outside resources to tip the battle in her favor. In a random, unprepared fight, Liandrin would likely overwhelm Moiraine quickly with her faster attacks and shielding techniques. However, if Moiraine has even a small amount of time to prepare, she would find a way to outmaneuver and defeat Liandrin, proving that true power is not always about raw strength. It is about how wisely that strength is used.